The sky above Drakon Prime blazed with colors. Purple, gold, and crimson lights danced across the atmosphere as millions of citizens gathered in the streets below. Today marked 500 years since the Vakrin Empire began its conquest of the stars. 500 years of victories. 500 years of proving they were the strongest species in the galaxy. Overlord Tharmek stood on the grand balcony of the Imperial Palace, watching the celebration unfold. His forearms spread wide as he addressed the crowds through holographic projectors that made his image appear across the entire planet. His voice boomed with pride and confidence. Today we celebrate our greatness. No species has ever challenged us and survived. No world has resisted our might. We are eternal. The crowds roared their approval. Fireworks exploded overhead. Orbital stations released streams of light that painted patterns across the night sky. Children waved flags. Adults sang the Imperial anthem. Everyone believed this day would never end. High above the planet, far beyond the celebration, something changed. Space itself seemed to ripple and bend. The change was small at first, barely noticeable on the sensors of the orbital defense platforms. Then it grew stronger. Alarms began to sound in the military command center. High Commander Velsera was the first to see the readings. Her three eyes widened as she stared at the display. "Impossible," she whispered. The gravitational readings were off the scale. Something massive was about to appear. "Alert the Overlord," she barked at her officers. "Something is coming through." But before the message could reach the palace, it happened. The fabric of space tore open, and a monster emerged from the void. The THS Indomitable dropped into normal space directly above the capital city. The ship was enormous, stretching 3 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, covered in scars from countless battles. Weapon ports lined its surface like the scales of a great beast. The ship hung motionless in the sky, blotting out the stars behind it. The celebration stopped. Music died. People looked up and pointed. Fear replaced joy in an instant. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Daywan sat in his command chair and watched the planet below. His face was calm, showing no emotion. He had done this before many times. He knew exactly what would happen next. "All systems green, Captain," reported Engineer Sung-Ho from his station. "Reactor at 30%. Weapons charged and ready. Shields at maximum." "Good," Daywan replied. His voice was quiet but firm. "Lieutenant Heejin, begin scanning their defensive positions." The tactical officer's fingers danced across her console. "Scanning now, sir. I count 200 orbital defense platforms. 400 fighter craft on standby. Multiple ground-based weapon emplacements." She paused. "They're starting to mobilize," Daywan nodded. "As expected. Ambassador Jiwoo, are you ready?" A woman in formal diplomatic robes stepped forward from the back of the bridge. Ambassador Jiwoo carried herself with dignity and purpose. She held a data tablet containing humanity's demands. "I'm ready, Captain." "Then let's introduce ourselves." Jiwoo activated the communication system. The Indomitable's computers were powerful enough to hack into every communication device on the planet simultaneously. Every screen, every speaker, every holographic display suddenly showed the same image: a human woman standing on the bridge of a warship. "People of the Vakrin Empire," Jiwoo began, her voice clear and steady. "I am Ambassador Jiwoo of the Terran Confederation. We have come to deliver a message to your government." Down in the Imperial Palace, Overlord Tharmek stared at the holographic projection in disbelief. "A human here? Impossible!" Humans were primitives, barely capable of space travel. They controlled only a handful of colony worlds on the edge of known space. 3 years ago, Jiwoo continued, your empire attacked our colony on Hesper IV. You killed 3,000 civilians. You took 500 prisoners. We have proof that these prisoners are being held in facilities across your empire, subjected to experiments and torture. Tharmek's mandibles clicked in anger. How did they know about that? We demand the immediate and unconditional surrender of the Vakrin Empire, Jiwoo stated. All human prisoners must be released unharmed. You have 3 days to comply. If you refuse, the consequences will be severe. The transmission ended. For a moment, the entire planet was silent. Then Overlord Tharmek began to laugh. The sound started as a low rumble and built into a roaring bellow that echoed through the palace halls. One ship, he howled. One ship. They send one ship and demand our surrender? He turned to his military advisors. How many vessels do we have in this system? 200 warships, my lord, one officer replied, with reinforcements available from neighboring systems. Then destroy them. Blow that primitive scrap metal out of my sky. High Commander Velsara felt a cold sensation in her stomach. Something was wrong. Species didn't make demands like this without being confident they could back them up. My lord, perhaps we should consider— I will consider nothing, Tharmek roared. Launch the fleet. Show these humans what happens when they challenge the Vakran Empire. Across the planet, Vakran citizens watched as their warships launched from orbital docks, sleek vessels powered by fusion drives, armed with plasma cannons and kinetic accelerators. 200 ships, each one a masterpiece of Vakran engineering. The fleet formed up in attack formation, completely surrounding the human battleship. On the Indomitable's bridge, Navigator Youngsu monitored the approaching vessels. Sir, enemy fleet is taking position. They'll be in firing range in 90 seconds. Captain Daewon studied the tactical display. 200 ships against one. The Vakran probably thought they had overwhelming odds. They had no idea what they were facing. Lieutenant Hyejin, status of weapon systems. All weapon systems ready, Captain. Point defense grid is online. Main cannon charged to full capacity. Drone bays are prepared for deployment. Medical Officer Minna. Prepare for potential casualties. In the ship's medical bay, Minna checked her supplies and made sure all equipment was functioning properly. She didn't expect to need much. The Indomitable had never taken serious damage in combat. But Captain Daewon always insisted on being prepared. All crew, this is the captain, Daewon announced over the ship-wide communication system. We are about to engage the Vakran fleet. Remember your training. Stay calm, do your jobs. We will show them why humanity doesn't need numbers to win. The Vakran fleet opened fire. 200 ships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Plasma bolts blazed through space. Kinetic rounds accelerated to incredible speeds. Missiles streaked toward their target, leaving trails of fire in their wake. Every eye on the planet watched the sky. Every sensor tracked the incoming destruction. Surely nothing could survive such an assault. The weapons struck the Indomitable's shields. Light flared across the barrier, bright enough to be seen from the planet's surface. The barrage continued for 30 seconds straight, enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. Then the light faded. The smoke cleared. The Indomitable hung in space, completely undamaged. Not a single scratch on its hull. The shields hadn't even flickered. In the Imperial Palace, Overlord Tharmek stopped laughing. His forearms fell to his sides. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Daewon leaned forward in his chair. His calm expression never changed. Stations, he said quietly. Show them why humanity doesn't need a fleet. Lieutenant Hyejin's fingers moved across her console. Target locked. Main cannon ready. Fire. The main cannon of the Indomitable fired. A beam of concentrated energy and accelerated matter crossed the distance between the battleship and its target in less than a heartbeat. The beam struck a Vakran cruiser on the starboard side of the enemy formation. The cruiser didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a powerful warship with a crew of 300. The next moment there was nothing but empty space and a cloud of atoms too small to see. Every other ship in the Vakran fleet stopped firing. Stunned silence filled the communication channels. 300 lives erased in an instant. Not even debris remained. Target destroyed, Lieutenant Hyejin reported, her voice steady. All other enemy vessels are holding position. They've stopped shooting at us, Captain Daewon nodded. Open a channel to the Vakran fleet. The communication went out on all frequencies. Daewon's voice was calm, almost conversational. This is Captain Daewon of the THS Indomitable. We can do that 199 more times. Or you can withdraw your ships and let your government consider our terms. The choice is yours. On the planet below, billions watched in horror. The celebration had turned into a nightmare. Parents held their children close. Military officers stared at their screens in disbelief. The impossible had just happened. The Vakran Empire's mighty fleet had been rendered helpless by a single shot. High Commander Velsara knew she had to act quickly. She opened a command channel to the fleet. All ships fall back to defensive positions around the planet. Do not engage unless fired upon. The Vakran warships began to retreat, moving slowly and carefully. No captain wanted to make any sudden moves that might provoke another shot from that terrifying weapon. In the Imperial Palace, Overlord Tharmek's rage had turned to shock. His advisors stood in silence, unsure what to say. Finally, one brave officer spoke up. "My lord, perhaps we should consider their demands. We could negotiate, no. Tharmek slammed two of his fists on the table. "I will not surrender to primitives. Activate the planetary shields. Call for reinforcements from every system within 5 days' travel. We will crush this insolent ship." Velsara wanted to protest. She wanted to point out that reinforcements might not matter if the enemy could destroy their ships so easily. But she held her tongue. Arguing with the Overlord in his current state would be dangerous. Aboard the Indomitable, Engineer Sung Ho monitored the ship's systems. The main cannon had performed perfectly, just as he knew it would. He had maintained this ship for 8 years and knew every circuit, every power conduit, every weapon system better than he knew his own face. A junior engineer approached him nervously. "Sir, I don't understand. How did we destroy their ship so completely? What kind of weapon was that?" Sung Ho smiled slightly. "That was a plasma kinetic hybrid beam. We accelerate a projectile to 0.3 light speed and wrap it in a shell of superheated plasma. When it hits, the kinetic energy tears the target apart at the molecular level while the plasma converts everything into vapor." He paused. "Want to know the really impressive part?" The junior engineer nodded. "That shot used less than 1% of our reactor's output. The Indomitable's power core generates more energy than this entire planet produces in a year." The young engineer's eyes widened. He had known their ship was powerful, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Medical Officer Minna made her rounds through the ship, checking on the crew. Combat always created stress, even when it was brief and one-sided. She found several officers showing signs of tension and gave them mild relaxants. Nothing serious. Everyone was performing well. She stopped by the holding area where they kept supplies for potential rescued prisoners. She had read the reports about what the Vakran had done to human captives. The medical details made her angry. The torture, the experiments, the casual cruelty. She hoped they would get those people back soon. 2 days passed. The Vakran Empire mobilized with desperate speed. Overlord Tharmek called in every favor, demanded every ship. 500 additional warships arrived from neighboring systems. The fleet now surrounding the Indomitable numbered 700 vessels. The planetary shields were fully activated, creating a shimmering barrier in the upper atmosphere. Ground-based weapons were positioned and ready. Civilian evacuation plans were prepared, though no one really believed they would be needed. Surely 700 ships would be enough. On the Indomitable, Navigator Young-Soo maintained their exact position above the capital city. The ship hadn't moved even a meter. It simply hung there, patient and menacing, like a sword suspended over the Empire's throat. "Sir," Heejin reported, "the Vakran have assembled a much larger fleet. 700 ships now. They're taking up attack positions." Day 1 studied the tactical display. "Still not enough. Have they responded to our demands?" "No, sir. The Overlord refuses to negotiate. Then we proceed to the next phase. Prepare the drone swarms." Heejin's fingers flew across her console. "Drone bays 1 through 10 standing by. 10,000 units ready for deployment." Ambassador Jiwoo had been watching quietly from her position on the bridge. "Captain, may I send another message?" "Of course, Ambassador." Jiwoo activated the communication system again. Once more her image appeared on every screen across the planet. "People of the Vakran Empire, 2 days have passed. Your government has not complied with our demands. You have assembled a large fleet believing numbers will save you. They will not." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We do not wish to kill your people. We are not here for conquest or revenge. We only want our prisoners back. But make no mistake, we will take them with or without your cooperation. You have 1 day remaining." The transmission ended. Tharmek watched the human woman disappear from his screen and felt his anger building again. "How dare they? How dare these primitives threaten the Vakran Empire? Attack!" He screamed at his military commanders. "All ships attack now. Destroy them!" Velsara tried one last time. "My lord, they've shown they can destroy our ships with ease. Perhaps we should attack, or I will have you executed for cowardice." Velsara had no choice. She gave the order. "All ships engage the enemy vessel." 700 Vakran warships opened fire simultaneously. The amount of firepower directed at the Indomitable could have destroyed a continent. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, missiles, energy beams, everything the Empire had built over 500 years of conquest. The Indomitable's shields held easily. Not even a flicker. The ship's point defense grid activated next, and that's when the Vakrin fleet truly began to understand what they faced. Thousands of small turrets across the Indomitable's hull tracked incoming projectiles. Each turret fired micro-railgun rounds at incredible speeds. Every missile, every kinetic round, every piece of incoming ordnance was intercepted and destroyed before it could reach the ship. It was like watching a master artist at work. Not a single shot got through. The defensive grid was so precise, so perfectly coordinated, that it seemed almost beautiful in its efficiency. Their point defense is beyond anything we've ever seen, one Vakrin tactical officer reported to Velsara. We can't hit them. We can't even get close. Pull back the fleet, Velsara ordered. She wouldn't send more ships to die uselessly, but Day-1 wasn't finished demonstrating humanity's capabilities. Lieutenant Hyjin, deploy the drones. Show them what's coming next. The Indomitable's drone bays opened. 10,000 autonomous combat drones launched into space, each one the size of a fighter craft. They moved with perfect coordination, their AI-controlled systems communicating instantly with each other and the mothership. The drones spread out across the battlefield, surrounding the Vakrin fleet. They didn't attack immediately. They just took position, waiting. On every Vakrin bridge, alarms began to sound. Sensors struggled to track all 10,000 targets. Fire control systems became overwhelmed by the sheer number of potential threats. My lord, Velsara reported to the Overlord, her voice tight with fear. They've deployed autonomous drones, thousands of them. They're surrounding our fleet. Tharmek stared at the tactical display. 10,000 drones against 700 ships. The numbers should have favored the Vakrin, but looking at how precisely those drones moved, how perfectly they coordinated, he knew numbers didn't matter anymore. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Day-1 leaned back in his chair. Ambassador, please inform the Vakrin Empire that this is their last warning. They have until tomorrow at this time to surrender and release our prisoners. If they refuse, the drones will begin disabling their fleet. After the fleet is dealt with, we will proceed to extract our people by force. Jiwoo broadcasted the message. The entire planet heard it. The entire empire heard it. And for the first time in 500 years, the Vakrin Empire truly understood what it meant to face a superior power. They had one day left to decide their fate. The third day began with eerie silence. The Vakrin fleet maintained defensive positions but didn't fire. The drones circled like hunting birds, waiting for orders. The Indomitable remained motionless above the capital, its presence a constant reminder of the deadline approaching. On the streets of Drakon Prime, citizens argued and fought. Some demanded their government surrender to save lives. Others insisted they fight to the last rather than submit to humans. Families packed their belongings, preparing to evacuate to the countryside, though they had nowhere truly safe to go. In the Imperial Palace, Overlord Tharmek hadn't slept. His 4 eyes were bloodshot, his movements jerky with exhaustion and stress. Advisors came and went, each one bringing worse news than the last. My lord, the civilian population is on the verge of panic. My lord, 3 colonial governors are requesting permission to negotiate separately with the humans. My lord, our intelligence suggests the humans may have an entire fleet waiting nearby. Tharmek dismissed them all. He had made his decision. Bring me the human prisoners, he ordered. All of them. Bring them to the central broadcast facility. High Commander Velsara felt her blood run cold. My lord, what are you planning? If these humans care so much about their people, we'll use them as leverage. We'll threaten to execute the prisoners unless that ship withdraws. That won't work, Velsara said quietly. They've already shown they don't negotiate. They make demands. Then we'll see how much they care about their people when we start killing them on live broadcast. Velsara wanted to protest further but knew it was useless. The Overlord had gone beyond reason into desperation. Aboard the Indomitable, Intelligence Officer Jae-hyun intercepted the order to move the prisoners. His console lit up with decoded Vakrin communications. He read the message twice to make sure he understood correctly, then immediately reported to Captain Day-1. Sir, they're gathering all human prisoners at a single location, the central broadcast facility in the capital. I think they're planning to use them as hostages. Day-1's expression didn't change, but his voice carried an edge of cold anger. Time until the deadline expires? 4 hours, sir. Not acceptable. If they're gathering our people, they're planning something that will get those people killed. He turned to Hyejin. Lieutenant, can you pinpoint the exact location of that broadcast facility? Already scanning, Captain. Got it. Coordinates locked. How many prisoners are we talking about? Jae-hyun checked his data. 512 confirmed. Ages ranging from 16 to 70. Civilians, scientists, some colony defense personnel. Medical reports indicate they're in poor condition. Malnutrition, injuries, some showing signs of experimentation. Medical Officer Minna had been listening from her station, her hands clenched into fists. Captain, we need to get them out now, not in 4 hours now. Daewon nodded slowly. Agreed. Change of plans. We're not waiting for the deadline. Lieutenant Hyejin, prepare an extraction operation. I want Marines and drop pods ready to launch in 30 minutes. Yes, sir. How many pods? All of them. We're hitting every known prison facility simultaneously. We'll get our people out while the Vakrin are still moving them around. Engineer Sung-ho spoke up from his station. Captain, if we launch a ground assault, they'll definitely fire on our forces. The planetary shields will make things difficult. Then take down the shields. Can you do it? Sung-ho grinned. Give me 10 minutes. I'll map out every shield generator on the planet and plot firing solutions. You have 5 minutes. Navigator Young-soo, as soon as those shields drop, I need you to extend our defensive field to cover the landing zones. Young-soo looked surprised. Sir, extending shields that far to atmosphere level? That's going to drain a lot of power. Can it be done? Yes, sir. It'll be tight, but yes. Then make it happen. The bridge burst into controlled activity. Every officer worked with practiced efficiency, coordinating the most complex operation the Indomitable had attempted during this mission. They were about to insert ground forces into a hostile capital city, while under potential fire from an entire planet's defenses. In the Marine Deployment Bay, Sergeant Kyung-soo gathered his soldiers. 200 Marines in powered armor, equipped with weapons that could punch through tank plating. Each suit enhanced strength tenfold and could survive hits that would kill unarmored soldiers. Listen up. Kyung-soo's voice boomed through the bay. We're going down to get our people. 500 prisoners in multiple locations. We hit fast, we hit hard, and we get them out. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. Your job is to protect those civilians and bring them home. Understood? Sir, yes, sir. The Marines shouted in unison. Corporal Hanul checked her weapons one final time. She had volunteered for this mission specifically because she had a sister on Hesper IV when the Vakrin attacked. Her sister survived, but 500 others weren't so lucky. This was personal. 5 minutes to drop, the launch coordinator announced. On the bridge, Sung-ho finished his calculations. Captain, I've got targeting solutions for all 40 shield generators. They're distributed around the planet but concentrated in the capital region. Highlight them for Lieutenant Hyejin. Hyejin studied the targets. 40 installations, 40 shots. She would need to be perfect. I can do this, sir. Give me manual control of the point defense grid. Daewon didn't hesitate. You have control. Fire when ready. Below on Drakon Prime, technicians at the shield generator stations had no warning. The Indomitable's point defense turrets, the same ones that had effortlessly destroyed incoming missiles, now turned their attention to ground targets. 40 beams of concentrated energy lanced down from orbit. Each one struck a shield generator with pinpoint accuracy. The generators exploded in sequence, creating a chain reaction of failures across the entire planetary network. The shields flickered and died. The planet was exposed. Shields down, Sung-ho reported. Nice shooting, Lieutenant. Thank you. Marines are ready for deployment. Daewon opened a channel to the Marine Bay. Sergeant Kyung-soo, you are cleared for drop. Bring our people home. Yes, sir. The drop pods launched like meteors, streaking through the atmosphere. The Vakrin defense forces tracked them in panic, unsure whether to fire. If they shot at the pods, the Indomitable might destroy more of their installations. If they did nothing, humans would land on their capital world. Overlord Tharmek made the decision for them. Fire! Shoot down those pods! Ground-based weapons opened fire. Energy beams and missiles rose to meet the falling pods. But before any could connect, something impossible happened. The Indomitable's shields extended downward, stretching through the atmosphere to create protective barriers around the landing zones. The shield field glowed blue as it absorbed the incoming fire. Not a single shot reached the marine pods. Impossible. Velsara stared at her tactical display. They're projecting shields through atmosphere over a 100-kilometer radius. The power requirements for that should be... She trailed off, understanding flooding through her. The humans weren't just ahead in weapons technology. They were ahead in everything. Power generation, defensive systems, computer coordination. Every aspect of their technology was beyond what the Vakran could match. The drop pods hit their targets. Marines deployed in teams of 5 to 10, spreading out to 6 different prison facilities across the capital. Their powered armor let them move faster than any Vakran soldier could react. At Prison Facility 7, Sergeant Kyung-soo's team breached the main door with a shaped charge. Vakran guards inside raised their weapons but hesitated. Should they fire? Would it even matter against that armor? Kyung-soo made the decision for them. His team's weapons fired stun rounds, dropping the guards without killing them. Secure the facility. Find the prisoners! Corporal Hanul led her team deeper into the building. They found the human prisoners in underground cells, exactly where intelligence said they would be. The conditions were worse than she expected. People in torn clothing, too thin, some unable to stand. We're getting you out, she told them, her voice gentle despite the situation. Can you walk? One prisoner, a woman with gray hair and defiant eyes despite her condition, stood up slowly. We can walk. We've been waiting for someone to come. What's your name? Dr. Hyorin. I was the chief xenobiologist on Hesper 4. How many of us are left? 512 confirmed. We're getting all of you out today. Similar scenes played out at all 6 facilities. The Marines moved with brutal efficiency, overwhelming the guards and securing the prisoners. The powered armor made them nearly unstoppable. Vakran weapons barely scratched the paint. At the broadcast facility where Tharmek had planned to make his hostage threat, the Marines arrived before the prisoners did. Kyung-soo's team set up a defensive perimeter and waited. When the Vakran transport vehicles arrived with prisoners in chains, they found humans in armor waiting for them. The Vakran guards took one look at the Marines and surrendered without firing a shot. Aboard the Indomitable, Daiwan watched the operation unfold on multiple screens. Every team was reporting success. Every prisoner was being secured. The operation was going perfectly. Then everything changed. Tharmek, watching his plans collapse, made one final desperate decision. If I can't use them as hostages, he snarled, then they're worthless to me. Lieutenant Heejin's fingers moved across her console with deadly precision. Her screen showed every military installation on the planet that was powering up weapons to fire on the extraction zones. 37 targets. She plotted firing solutions for each one in under 10 seconds. Targets locked, Captain. Ready to fire. Fire at will. Eliminate the threat. The Indomitable's weapon systems came alive. Not the main cannon this time, but dozens of smaller turrets designed for precision strikes. Beams of energy lanced down from orbit, each one striking a military base, command center, or weapon platform with perfect accuracy. The installations exploded in sequence, creating a chain of fireballs across the capital region. But the surrounding civilian areas remained untouched. Every shot hit exactly what it was meant to hit, nothing more. No collateral damage, no innocent casualties. On the ground, Sergeant Kyung-soo watched the sky light up with explosions. Command, this is Ground Team Leader. The threat has been neutralized. Continuing prisoner evacuation. His team was loading rescued prisoners into the drop pods, preparing them for the return trip to the Indomitable. The prisoners were weak and scared, but alive. That's all that mattered. Dr. Hyorin, despite her condition, was helping organize the other prisoners. 3 years of captivity hadn't broken her spirit. She moved from person to person, checking on them, offering encouragement. How did you find us? She asked Kyung-soo as she helped an elderly man into a pod. Intelligence Officer Jae-hyun tracked all Vakran communications. We knew where every prisoner was being held. And you came for all of us? Even though we're just civilians? Kyung-soo looked at her directly. Especially because you're civilians. Humanity doesn't abandon its people. Ever. Corporal Han-Nul secured the last of her assigned prisoners and radioed in. Team 3, all prisoners loaded and secure. Ready for extraction. Similar reports came in from all 6 facilities. 512 prisoners, all accounted for, all safe. The Marines had done their job perfectly. But the operation wasn't over yet. The drop pods needed to get back through the atmosphere to the Indomitable, and the Vakran military was in chaos. Some units were following the Overlord's orders to fire. Others were refusing. The command structure had collapsed with Velsara's death. All teams prepare for emergency extraction, Daewon ordered. Navigator Youngsu extends shields to maximum coverage. I want every pod protected on the way up. Already on it, Captain. Shield extension at maximum. They're not getting a single shot through. The drop pods launched back into the sky carrying their precious cargo. Vakran weapons fired at them desperately. But every shot splashed harmlessly against the Indomitable's extended shields. The blue energy barrier stretched across the sky like a protective dome. Inside one pod, Dr. Hyorin sat squeezed between two other prisoners. The pod shook with turbulence as it climbed through the atmosphere. She could hear the impacts of weapons fire against the shields outside, but the sound was distant, muffled. Is this real? The man next to her whispered. Are we really going home? Yes, Hyorin replied, tears streaming down her face. We're going home. The pods docked with the Indomitable one by one. Medical Officer Minna was waiting with her entire medical staff. They had prepared 500 beds in the ship's medical bay and auxiliary areas. Fluids, medications, everything needed to treat malnutrition and injuries. As the first prisoners emerged from the pods, Minna felt her heart break. They were so thin, so damaged. Some could barely walk. Others had visible scars from experiments. But they were alive, and she would make sure they stayed that way. Welcome aboard the Indomitable, she told each one. You're safe now. We're taking you home. Dr. Hyorin was one of the last to emerge. Despite her own condition, she immediately approached Minna. I'm a doctor. I can help with the others. You need treatment yourself. I've had 3 years to get used to being hungry. These people need you more than I do. Please let me help. Minna recognized that look, the need to be useful, to contribute, to prove you weren't helpless. She nodded. All right, but you're getting an IV while you work. Together they moved through the medical bay, treating the rescued prisoners. Minna worked with practiced efficiency, but inside she was furious. What she saw confirmed all the reports. The Vakran hadn't just imprisoned these people. They had experimented on them, testing human limits, studying their biology like lab animals. On the bridge, Captain Daewon received the final confirmation. Sir, all prisoners are aboard. Medical is treating them now. Casualties 0. Good work, everyone. Daewon opened a channel to the entire ship. All hands, this is the captain. Mission accomplished. 512 humans rescued. 0 casualties among our people or theirs. You should all be proud. The crew didn't cheer. They weren't the type for loud celebrations. But there was a sense of satisfaction that filled the ship. They had done what they came to do. Ambassador Jiwoo stepped forward. Captain, should I broadcast our final ultimatum? Yes, let's end this. Jiwoo activated the communication system one last time. Her image appeared across the planet again, but this time her expression was harder, less patient. People of the Vakran Empire, we have retrieved our prisoners. All 512 humans are now safe aboard our ship. Your government had 3 days to comply with our demands peacefully. They chose violence instead. They murdered their own high commander. They fired on their own cities in an attempt to kill our rescue teams. She paused, letting the words sink in. Many Vakran citizens hadn't known what Tharmek had done. Learning it now from the humans made it even more humiliating. Your deadline has expired. The Terran Confederation hereby demands the immediate and unconditional surrender of the Vakran Empire. Overlord Tharmek will stand trial for war crimes. Your military will be reduced. Your territory will be limited to your core systems, and a Terran monitoring station will be established in orbit to ensure compliance. Down in the Imperial Palace, Tharmek listened to the demands with growing horror. Surrender, trial, reduced territory. This was the end of everything the Empire had built. Never, he screamed. I will never surrender to primitives. His remaining advisors exchanged glances. They had all seen what the humans could do. They had watched one ship defeat 700. They had seen rescue operations executed with impossible precision. They knew the truth that Tharmek refused to accept. The Vakran Empire had already lost. One brave advisor spoke up. My lord, perhaps we should consider— I have one weapon left, Tharmek interrupted. One weapon they can't defend against. He turned to his military technicians. Activate the planetary defense cannon. The advisors went pale. The planetary defense cannon was an ancient weapon, built during the early days of the Empire. It drew power directly from the planet's core, channeling geothermal energy into a massive beam capable of cracking moons. It had never been fired in combat because the energy requirements were so extreme. My lord, that weapon is untested. We don't know if it will even work. Then we'll find out. Target their ship. Fire when ready. Deep beneath the surface of Drakon Prime, ancient machinery groaned to life. Power systems that had been dormant for centuries began drawing energy from geothermal vents. The cannon was housed in a massive underground facility, its barrel extending through bedrock to the surface. Aboard the Indomitable, alarms suddenly blared. Engineer Sung-Ho's console lit up with warnings. Captain, massive energy buildup on the planet's surface. It's my god, they're tapping geothermal power. I'm reading energy levels that match a small star. Source? It's a planetary defense cannon. Old design, but incredibly powerful. If that thing fires, even our shields might not. Time until firing? 30 seconds. Taewon's mind raced. They could move the ship, but the cannon might track them. They could fire first, but destroying the cannon might cause a catastrophic reaction that could devastate the area around it, killing civilians. There was only one option. They had to let it fire and trust their shields would hold. All hands, brace for impact. Divert all available power to forward shields. Engineering, I need everything the reactor can give us. Sung-Ho's fingers flew across his console. Reactor output increasing to maximum. Shields at 200% capacity. This is going to hurt. Navigator Youngsu held the ship steady. No evasive maneuvers. If the shields failed, moving wouldn't help anyway. On the planet's surface, the cannon fired. A beam of pure energy, wider than a city block, erupted from the ground and struck upward into space. The beam was so bright that everyone on the planet had to look away. The sound was like thunder and earthquakes combined. The beam struck the Indomitable's forward shields. For 3 full seconds, the battleship's defensive barrier held against the most powerful weapon the Vakran Empire possessed. The shields glowed white-hot, crackling with barely contained energy. Inside the ship, power conduits overloaded. Backup systems kicked in. The lights flickered, then the cannon ran out of power. The beam cut off. Smoke rose from the firing emplacement. Aboard the Indomitable, Sung-Ho checked his systems frantically. Shield integrity at 42%. We held, the ship is intact. The bridge crew let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. They had survived. Against a weapon that could crack moons their shields had held. The Indomitable's main cannon fired at full power for the first time in the entire engagement. The hypervelocity projectile left the ship traveling at 30% of light speed, wrapped in a shell of superheated plasma. It crossed the distance to the planet's surface in less than a heartbeat. The projectile struck the planetary defense cannon's emplacement with pinpoint accuracy. The impact released energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, but directed downward into the underground facility. The cannon, its power systems, the geothermal taps, everything vaporized in an instant. A mushroom cloud rose from the impact site, visible from orbit. But the surrounding city remained intact. Captain Daewon had calculated the angle and force perfectly. Maximum damage to the target, minimal collateral effect. The civilians living nearby felt the ground shake, but their buildings stood. In the Imperial Palace, Overlord Tharmek watched his last weapon disappear in a pillar of fire. He stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. His empire's most powerful weapon, destroyed in seconds. His fleet, defeated. His prisoners, rescued. His capital exposed and vulnerable. He had nothing left. The Vakran Empire, which had ruled this sector of space for 500 years, had been brought to its knees in 3 days by a single human ship. Across the planet, military commanders made their decisions. Without central leadership, without hope of victory, they began standing down. Warships powered down their weapons. Ground forces returned to barracks. No one wanted to die for a war that was already lost. The civilian population had watched everything. They had seen their government's arrogance lead to disaster. They had seen their overlord murder his own high commander. They had seen their military fail again and again. Now they demanded change. Protests erupted in every major city. Citizens filled the streets calling for Tharmek's removal. Some demanded surrender to save lives. Others just wanted the nightmare to end. The empire was collapsing from within. Ambassador Jiwoo watched the chaos unfold on the monitors. Captain, it appears their government is falling apart. Expected, Daewon replied. A society built on conquest doesn't handle defeat well. Heejin, what's the status of their fleet? Most ships are powering down weapons and engines. I'm reading mass surrenders across their military. A few die-hard units are maintaining combat readiness, but they're not making any aggressive moves. Keep monitoring them. If any ship makes a hostile action, disable it. Yes, sir. In the medical bay, Dr. Hyorin worked alongside Medical Officer Mina, treating her fellow prisoners. Despite her exhaustion, she felt more alive than she had in 3 years. She was doing useful work again. She was helping people. She was free. Between patients, she found time to ask Mina questions about the ship. How many people are in the Terran military? About 2 million active personnel across all branches. And how many ships like this one? Mina smiled slightly. That's classified. But let's just say the Indomitable isn't alone. Hyorin understood the implication. If humanity had more ships like this one, they were a major power whether the rest of the galaxy knew it or not. Why did humanity stay quiet for so long? Why let species like the Vakrin think we were weak? We weren't quiet. We just weren't interested in conquest. We built our colonies, developed our technology, and mostly kept to ourselves. But attacking our people? Mina's expression hardened. That crossed a line. On the bridge, Intelligence Officer Jae-hyun was monitoring communications across the Empire. Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from multiple Vakrin colonies. Several governors are broadcasting their willingness to negotiate separate peace terms. The Empire is fragmenting. Inform them that we negotiate only with the central government. No separate deals. The Empire surrenders as one or faces consequences as one. Yes, sir. Hours passed. The situation on Drakon Prime grew more chaotic. In the Imperial Palace, Tharmek's own guards were discussing whether to arrest him. The Overlord sat alone in his command center, staring at screens that showed his empire falling apart. Finally, a delegation of civilian leaders forced their way into the palace. They found Tharmek and delivered their ultimatum: surrender to the humans or face removal by his own people. Tharmek looked at them with empty eyes. You would betray your own kind for primitives? You're the one who betrayed us, one of the delegates replied. You started a war we couldn't win. You murdered our high commander. You fired on our own cities. And now you want us to die for your pride? No. This ends now. They arrested him. The overlord of the Vakrin Empire, ruler of dozens of worlds, was taken into custody by his own people. Within an hour, the civilian government had assumed emergency powers and sent a message to the Indomitable. Ambassador Jiwoo received the transmission and brought it to Captain Daewon. Captain, the Vakrin civilian government is requesting permission to negotiate surrender terms. Acceptable. Prepare the standard occupation terms. War crimes tribunal for those responsible. Reparations for damages. Territory reduction to core systems. Permanent monitoring to ensure compliance. Those are harsh terms, Captain. They attacked our civilians. They tortured our people. They just tried to use a planet-killer weapon on us. Harsh is appropriate. Jiwoo nodded. She couldn't disagree. I'll begin negotiations immediately. The negotiations took 6 hours. The Vakrin civilian government tried to soften some terms, but Jiwoo held firm. This wasn't a negotiation between equals. This was a surrender. Finally, the Vakrin delegates agreed to everything. They would sign the surrender documents, hand over war criminals for trial, accept territorial reductions, and allow a Terran monitoring station in permanent orbit. As the final documents were being prepared, Navigator Young-Soo noticed something on his sensors. Captain, multiple FTL signatures detected at the system's edge. Large ships, a lot of them. Daewon smiled slightly. Right on time. Open a channel. The communication connected and a woman's voice came through. This is Admiral Ji Young of the Terran Third Fleet. We received your signal that the situation was under control, but Command wanted us here anyway. How's it going, Daewon? The Empire is surrendering as we speak. You missed all the fun. Lucky you. We brought 50 battleships just in case. Want us to make a show of force? Daewon considered it. Then he nodded. Yes. Let them see what they would have faced if this had gone differently. The Terran Third. Fleet dropped out of FTL at the system's edge and began moving toward the planet. 50 battleships, each one as powerful as the Indomitable. 100 cruisers, countless support vessels. The entire fleet, displayed in perfect formation. Every sensor on Drakon Prime tracked the fleet's approach. The Vakran civilian delegates watched in horror as screen after screen showed human warships entering their system. This was the real Terran military. This was what they had almost faced. One delegate turned to Ambassador Jiwoo with wide eyes. "You sent one ship to make demands, just one, but you had all this waiting?" "We hoped one would be enough," Jiwoo replied calmly. "We didn't want unnecessary bloodshed. Captain Daewon and the Indomitable gave your empire every chance to surrender peacefully. Your previous government chose violence instead." The delegate understood. The humans hadn't been bluffing. They hadn't been desperate. That single battleship hadn't been a desperate gamble. It had been a test, a demonstration, and the Empire had failed spectacularly. The surrender documents were signed within the hour. Overlord Tharmek and 37 other Vakran officials were transferred to Terran custody to face war crimes tribunals. The Vakran Empire's territory was reduced to its original 12 systems. The Third Fleet established a permanent monitoring station in orbit around Drakon Prime. In the Indomitable's medical bay, the rescued prisoners were informed they were going home. Many cried with relief. Some couldn't believe it was real. Dr. Hyorin found herself sitting on a medical bed, finally allowing herself to rest. Medical Officer Min-Ah sat beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. Grateful. Angry that it took 3 years. Amazed that anyone came at all. Humanity doesn't abandon its people," Min-Ah said softly. "Never." Sergeant Kyung-soo visited the medical bay to check on the prisoners his team had rescued. He moved through the rows of beds, speaking quietly with people, making sure they had everything they needed. When he reached the bed where the elderly man from Prison Facility 7 was resting, the man grabbed his hand. "Thank you," the old man whispered. "Thank you for coming for us." Kyung-soo squeezed his hand gently. "No thanks needed. It's what we do." On the bridge, Captain Daewon stood at the main viewport looking down at Drakon Prime. The planet's lights were returning to normal patterns. Order was being restored. The crisis was over. Engineer Sung-ho approached him. "Captain, I've completed damage assessment. The shields took a beating from that planetary cannon, but we can repair them in a few days. Everything else is in good condition." "Good work, Sung-ho. Make sure the ship is ready for our next assignment." "Where are we headed?" "Wherever humanity needs us." Ambassador Jiwoo joined them at the viewport. "Captain, I've received word that 2 other minor empires have contacted the Confederation. They want to negotiate trade agreements and mutual defense pacts." Daewon raised an eyebrow. That was fast. "Hey,